Hello and welcome to the Meaning Project podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Daniel A. Franz. And as always, thank you for this opportunity to bring a little bit of mental health and meaning to your day. As you may notice, Rabbi B, Dr. Baruch Halevi, is away on assignment today in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I sent him out to discover meaning with his family. So hopefully B is out there enjoying the sun and fun and family in Florida. So with that, I was hoping you would indulge me and allow me to share some pieces of one of my favorite works from Dr. Frankl. That's right. You've heard it plenty of times before. Dr. Frankel's magnum opus, The Doctor and the Soul. Been reading it a lot lately and found just some great pieces in there that I thought would be good to share with you, things for you to take along with you on your run, on your grocery shopping, on your day, ideally to discover a little bit more meaning in your life. And with that, I'd really appreciate it. I've got a new studio set up today. So any feedback you might have on the video, the audio, background noise, etc., is always welcome. So you can find me at danielafranz.com. That's DanielAFranz.com. So let's talk a little bit about my recent findings in The Doctor and the Soul. As you've heard me say before, one of my favorite books from my studies in Dr. Frankl, and one of the ones I've probably highlighted and read and reread several times, but this time reading it with new eyes, right? With the idea of bringing it to our participants in the Viktor Frankl Meaning Academy and your search for meaning. So this was in the chapter just titled The Meaning of Life. And we talk about that a lot here, but just to have his teachings refreshed and to be reminded of some of the things he said in such powerful ways. Well, like I said, I thought I would share them with you. So this is only from maybe 4 or 5 pages early on in the book from the chapter, The Meaning of Life. But he tells us, this was just a short statement, the idea that life requires of man spiritual elasticity so that he may temper his efforts to the chances that are offered. Spiritual elasticity. That grabbed me when I read it early the other morning. That idea that not necessarily spirit in the religious sense, but that part of us, our nous, that makes us unique, our core, our being, our spirit, must be elastic. And in a previous page, he says this that I thought related really well. Our values, as well as our philosophic attitudes in any given case, afford us a view of only a cross-section of the world. In other words, our vision is limited by our individual perspectives. Wouldn't that be amazing if more people understood that today? As he tells us, we are all unique individuals with a task to carry out in life. But we are limited in that task by our own unique perspectives. We can only see what we see. And therefore, in our spirit, we must be elastic. We must be flexible to see so much, right? If we realize we are limited by our own perspectives and we can only see our own perspectives, and yet we can still remain spiritually elastic, flexible at our core, how does that open us up to more opportunities in life, to discover meaning, right? Not just to discover meaning, though, but to improve our relationships, to improve our interaction with the world, with our community. If we recognize we are limited by our own perspective, but we remain spiritually elastic, we can see those opportunities to discover meaning when they come our way. We can find the creative, the experiential, and the attitudinal values. We can flex our spirit. We can use that elasticity to see things from a different and new perspective. When we recognize we are limited by our own perspective, the answer should be spiritual elasticity. To recognize I need to be flexible, not just to discover meaning, but to interact with others, to see other people's perspectives. How beneficial would that be in your significant, intimate relationships with your partner, your spouse, your children, your coworkers? Recognizing I am limited by my own perspective. But if I stay flexible at my core, if I can see other people's perspectives, I have an opportunity to discover meaning. We have to realize we're limited by our perspective and remain spiritually elastic. Because, and these were some great passages on discovering meaning in your life. If you've been a listener to the podcast for a while, you know we've talked about the meaning triangle: creative, experiential, and attitudinal values, right? But in Doctor and the Soul, this chapter, he really expands on these ideas so well. So if you'll allow me to read to you just a little bit. Values which are realized in creative action, we should like to call creative values. In addition to these, there are values which are realized in experience, our experiential values. These latter are realized in receptivity toward the world. I love that idea, right? Tie all this together. If we recognize we're limited by our own perspective, yet we remain spiritually elastic, flexible, we are more receptive to what the world wants to offer us. We recognize we're limited, so we stay flexible, and then the world opens up to us to show us the experiences in which we can discover meaning. These latter are realized in receptivity toward the world. For example, in surrender to the beauty of nature or art. The fullness of meaning which such values bring to human life must not be underestimated. The higher meaning of a given moment in human existence can be fulfilled by the mere intensity in which it is experienced, and independent of any action. If anyone doubts this, let him consider the following situation. Imagine a music lover sitting in a concert hall while the most noble measures of his favorite symphony resound in his ears. He feels the shiver of emotion which we experience in the presence of purest beauty. Suppose now that at such a moment we should ask this person whether his life has meaning. He would have to reply that it had been worthwhile living in only to experience this ecstatic moment. For even though only a single moment is in question, the greatness of a life can be measured by the greatness of a moment. The height of a mountain range is not given by the height of some valley, but by that of the tallest peak. In life, too, the peaks decide the meaningfulness of life, and a single moment can retroactively flood an entire life with meaning. How rich is that idea? It's our peaks that give us meaning. Yes, there are valleys in life. There is suffering. There are difficulties. But we also get to experience the great peaks of existence, of life, of meaning. If we recognize our limitations, we can only see our own perspective. And then we allow ourselves to be flexible, spiritually elastic. We open ourselves up to the receptivity of the world, whether it's symphonies. We have an amazing opportunity coming up here in the near future. If you're listening to this when it comes out, we have a solar eclipse throughout the United States and different parts of the world. What an opportunity to experience something unique. But it doesn't have to be just a once-in-a-lifetime event or once every few decades event. It can be symphonies. It can be music. It can be art. I know just the other day, doing nothing so much as just sitting in the living room, I'm sure some basketball game on or something was on. Maybe I was reading. My wife looked out the window and she said, "My goodness, look at that sunset." And There was part of me that just wanted to stay on the couch, but I got up and looked at it, and it was truly beautiful. There's something magical about a sunset, especially here in Farmville. But it was even more magical to share it with my wife and to enjoy that together. How many more opportunities do we have to be able to experience that on a daily basis? It doesn't have to be just a solar eclipse, but you can create and you can experience regularly. He goes on to write this in Doctor and the Soul. We can also set up a third category of possible values. I'm sure you know where this is going. For life proves to be basically meaningful, even when it is neither fruitful in creation nor rich in experience. The third group of values lies precisely in a person's attitude toward the limiting factors upon his life. Now that's interesting. I didn't tie this together until just now. If we go back to one of those statements I made, that we need to recognize we are limited by our own perspective, we can also find meaning in recognizing those limitations and adopting a healthy attitude towards them. A person's very response to the restraints upon his potentialities provides him with a new realm of values, which surely belong among the highest values. Right? So he's saying this is one of the greatest ways we can discover meaning in our lives. Thus, an apparently impoverished existence, one which is poor in creative and experiential values, still offers a last, and in fact, the greatest opportunity for the realization of values. These values we will call attitudinal values. What is significant is the person's attitude toward an unalterable fate. The opportunity to realize such attitudinal values is therefore always present whenever a person finds himself confronted by a destiny toward which he can act only by acceptance. The way in which he accepts, the way in which he bears his cross, what courage he manifests in suffering, what dignity he displays in doom and disaster. This is the measure of his human fulfillment. We can give to life through creativity. We can be receptive and take from life an experience. But this, our attitude towards our fate. And it's interesting how he says this as I'm recording this during the Easter time of year, right? In the way he bears his cross. We have an example of that during this time of year, bearing our cross. What courage this manifests in suffering. How we choose to deal with our difficulties is an opportunity to discover meaning. Now, remember what he does say, though. If we have the opportunity to change our fate and not suffer, we should, right? Suffering, when we can change that, is just masochism. If you can change your fate and make it and improve it in some way, you certainly should. And I believe there's an opportunity to discover meaning in that as well. Let's go on. Right after he says that, as soon as we add attitudinal values to the list of possible categories of values, it is evident that human existence can never be intrinsically meaningless. Human existence can never be meaningless. As he says, life has meaning under all circumstances, even the most miserable. A man's life retains its meaning up to the last, until he draws his last breath. As long as he remains conscious, he is under obligation to realize values, even if these be only attitudinal values. As long as he has consciousness, he has responsibleness. This responsibility remains with him to the last moment of his existence. No matter how sparse the possibilities for realizing values may be, he has always the recourse to attitudinal values. Our starting point, the proposition that being human means being conscious and being responsible is reaffirmed in the moral sphere. We always have the opportunity to discover meaning up until our last breath. And I know I say this frequently and constantly on this podcast. But that's what this podcast is about. That's why it's called The Meaning Project, to help you discover meaning in life. That's why we started the Viktor Frankl Meaning Academy. The ways that you can do that by creating, by experiencing, but most significantly, by being mindful, by altering, by improving, by accepting life as it is, doing what you can to change an unalterable fate, but then also, if you can, turning that fate into some kind of human achievement, into accomplishment. I want to go on and read this last little bit for you. In life, the opportunities to address oneself to this or that group of values vary from hour to hour. From hour to hour, you have a choice whether to create, to experience, or to adapt your attitudes. Sometimes life demands of us the realization of creative values. At other times, we feel it necessary to turn to the category of experiential values. At one time, we were called upon, as it were, to enrich the world by our actions. Another time, to enrich ourselves by our experiences. Sometimes the demands of the hour may be fulfilled by an act. At another time, by our surrendering to the glory of an experience. How beautiful is it? I just love that statement, right? Sometimes the demands of the hour may be fulfilled by an act. Sometimes we have to do something in the moment to discover meaning, to help somebody else to discover meaning, right? But then there are other times where we simply need to sit back, surrender, and enjoy that sunset, listen to that symphony, see that play, observe that piece of art, gaze upon that mountain range, whatever it is. Man can be obligated to experience joy. You are obligated. It is a responsible action to experience joy. Why would you not? In this sense, a person sitting in a streetcar who has the opportunity, we don't have streetcars around here very often. You got to travel far away to go see a streetcar. I know this was maybe 50 years ago, but I digress. In this sense, a person sitting in a streetcar or an Uber or a Lyft or whatever you might be sitting in has the opportunity to watch a wonderful sunset or to breathe in the rich scent of the flowering acacias, and who instead goes on reading his newspaper, could at such a moment be accused of being negligent toward his obligations. Let that soak in, right? So we may not have streetcars and newspapers so much anymore. Sometimes we still have newspapers, but we often have our smartphones and our tablets and our laptops. And too often, if we go back, human beings are obligated to experience joy. But if you choose to stay buried in your smartphone, in social media, in the exposition of somebody else's life, their diet, what food they're eating, what abs they're showing off that day, at such a moment, you could be accused of being negligent of your obligations. Life has meaning under all circumstances, even those that aren't in somebody's social media feed. Dr. Frankel didn't say that, I just did. Too often, and maybe it's the circumstances of the week, but I know I was talking about this a lot. Sometimes we have to put things down. We have to put our phones down. We have to put social media down. We have to put down Dr. Dan's podcast. After the conclusion would be great. Sometimes we have to put things down because we are obligated to experience joy and to discover meaning in life. I know I'm a victim of it as well. To constantly find distractions, to exercise my thumb on social media or whatever it might be. And I know I recognize, I was just actually sharing this in the Your Search for Meaning community. Got up early the other day, feeling that 3 a.m. anxious energy. I knew I needed to do something, but I'll be damned. I sat down with that phone and a cup of coffee, and 15 minutes went by, and I laughed at myself. I said, you got to quit doing this. Get that book. What are you doing? And then another 10 minutes went by. The addictive nature was so powerful. What else do you find in life that prevents you from discovering that meaning of the moment, from finding the joy that you are obligated to experience as a human being? What are the times of creativity or experience that you might be avoiding? I know I've done that too. We have to choose those opportunities. There are a lot of experiences available to us. We have to choose wisely. What do you need to be creating right now to discover meaning? Is there a guitar you have to pick up? Is there a painting that you haven't painted yet? Or a poem or a book you haven't written? In engaging in those things, you will discover meaning. In discovering meaning in your life, you fight off anxiety, depression, existential angst, and all of these things that make life hard to live. You're obligated to discover joy. Get out there and go do it. Discover meaning through your creativity, through experience, and through your attitude. And as always, if you need help with that, you're welcome to contact me at danielafranz.com, DANIELAFRANZ.com, or join us at the Viktor Frankl Meaning Academy. Hop on Your Search for Meaning as we break these ideas down and continue to discuss them in a group. I don't know if we got to share with you the last group we had. It was a late night one. It was our late night Wednesday. We only had a few people. We had one person show up for that meeting, and it was awesome. I mean, I think the individual was quite delighted because basically he got an individual session with 3 logotherapists. I thought that was pretty cool, and it was exciting to work with him and to really take that hour and tackle his unique issues that he was bringing to that moment. It was a lot of fun. So we'd love to have you on board. Your Search for Meaning at The Meaning Academy. That's themeaningacademy.com. But whatever it is you're doing today, take some time. If you've gotten all the way through this podcast and you've absorbed these ways to discover meaning again, what are you going to do with it? You have an opportunity to go create, whether it's music or art or poetry or work, right? We get to create in our work as well. Hopefully you have some opportunities to experience. And maybe it's just experiencing the love of somebody close and important to you. But it might be a beautiful mountain range. We are in the season of spring breaks for a lot of people. Hopefully, I hope if you're out there, you're enjoying a sunrise or a sunset on some beach somewhere, maybe with your family, maybe on your own. And you take a moment to really embrace the meaning behind that opportunity. And of course, if you're struggling in life, if you find yourself suffering, you have an opportunity. If it is unalterable suffering, you have an opportunity to take a look at it and to somehow find the opportunity to turn that into achievement. As always, I appreciate this opportunity to bring a little bit of mental health and meaning to your day. Take care.